the media capital of the world.
Good afternoon, and welcome to a Burbank City Council meeting for Tuesday afternoon, June 9th, 2020. There will be 2 periods of public comment today. Persons speaking during the first period of public comment may address the council on any matter concerning city business and/or any agenda item, except the public hearing. Persons speaking during the second period of public comment may address the council regarding the public hearing item only. If you speak on the public hearing item during the first period of public comment, your comments will not be included in the public hearing record. If you'd like to participate in the public comment periods, please call 818-238-3335. We will announce when the phone lines are open for each period of public comment. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, will you please conduct the roll call?
Thank you. Good evening. Councilmember Ghiberletti.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Talamantes.
Present.
Vice Mayor Frutos.
Good afternoon, Madam City Clerk. Happy to be here.
Good afternoon. And Mayor Springer.
Here.
Thank you.
In order to balance the health risks associated with COVID-19 and the public's right to conduct the people's business in a transparent and open manner, during the current state of emergency and in the interest of public health and safety, council members will participate in an online city council meeting. City Hall is closed to the public until further notice, and the public will not be able to physically attend today's meeting. The city is providing alternatives to in-person attendance for viewing and participating in city council meetings. In lieu of in-person attendance, our phone lines are now open for the general public comment period, and members of the public may participate by calling in to 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue until the beginning of the first public comment period. We have 2 announcements today. Curbside pickup is now available at all Burbank public libraries. Simply request books, movies, or music via the library's online catalog at burbanklibrary.org or by calling any library branch. Once your items are ready, you will be notified how to set up an appointment for pickup. Library staff are happy to assist you with selecting items you'll enjoy, and be sure to wear a face mask when you come to pick up your library materials. The library's summer reading program has started, and it's all online this year. Readers of all ages are encouraged to practice the habit of reading every day. Sign up through our website, burbanklibrary.org, or call with questions. Record your reading days online or on paper, and you'll be eligible for great prizes. Reading, arts, and science programming for kids will be offered online all summer, along with curbside pickup of library materials, hundreds of thousands of ebooks, e-audiobooks, and streaming movies and music can be accessed online with your Burbank Library card. For full details of library services and programs, plus updates on reopening plans, visit burbanklibrary.org. I'd like to remind the public that we are accepting calls for public comment, and you may participate by calling in at 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue until we begin the first period of public comment. Today, City Council will be recognizing a generous contribution from the Syrian community of Burbank. During this unprecedented time, the Syrian community of Burbank has come together to support the needs of the city and the school district with a donation of $10,000 each, with goals to secure a second round of matching donations in the future. The Syrian community of Burbank is a group of Burbank residents descended from Syrian immigrants who made the United States their home over 100 years ago. They are a tight-knit community of highly skilled professionals and entrepreneurs who value their traditions, customs, and culture. As part of a grassroots effort, they are committed to contributing to this Burbank community in a meaningful way. Collectively, the Syrian community of Burbank makes up more than 1% of the Burbank population. Their vision is to establish themselves as a well-known community of responsible Burbank residents who can be relied upon to give back to the city that has given them so much. They encourage other residents to take up the cause so that our students and residents may always get the funding needed for success. May we please play the video from the Syrian community of Burbank.
My name is Anthony Mafu, and I am a lifelong resident of the city of Burbank. My family, along with hundreds of other Syrians, have proudly called Burbank our home for the past 100 years. We are a tight-knit community of educators, entrepreneurs, doctors, and other highly skilled professionals wanting to make a difference in the Burbank community. During this unprecedented time, the Syrian community of Burbank has come together to support the needs of the hardest-hit residents of the city and the school district with a large donation of $20,000. We have plans to follow up with a matching donation in the coming months. The hope is to continue these efforts for many years to come and to foster our relationship further. It is our civic duty to support and help our community during times of need. Our collective families make up no more than 1% of the city's population, and we look forward to continuing to grow alongside the beautiful city of Burbank.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much to the Syrian community for their very generous donation of $10,000 to the city of Burbank for the procurement of personal protective equipment for first responders. Thank you very much. That concludes council presentations for this afternoon. I'd like to remind the public that we are accepting calls for general public comment, and you may participate by calling in at 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue until we begin the first period of public comment. City Manager, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually do have some to report. if I could call up our police chief, Scott LaChasse, and I'd like to have him provide an update on some of the activities and notable events over the last 10 days and provide an update on all the different things that police, along with everyone else, has been doing to keep our city safe.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council Member, Scott LaChasse, Police Chief. What I'd like to do is just give you a brief recap of where we've been for the last week and a half or so. Last Sunday, May 31st, the county chiefs got together via a conference call, and based on the events in the city of Los Angeles, we had all agreed that we needed to mobilize our departments. So what that connotes is that we take the department and just divide it in half. And half the people will work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, the other half from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. And then we'll sometimes pull people off to put mid-watches with the same numbers of people, just to have additional people out there during transition times. So that got spun up on Sunday the 31st and was fully effective on Monday, June 1st. And that involved all our sworn and civilian personnel. And when a lot of people think about the police department, they're just thinking about the people in uniform, not the people behind the scenes. And it's those people that are behind the scenes that are just as valuable as the blue suiters out there to support the operations. So what we were able to do is establish a command post, and these were our primary missions. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we had sufficient staffing to handle the increased workload, which was very significant. In terms of traffic, we used our parking control officers, our motor officers to escort during demonstrations, to use our unmanned aerial systems, the platforms commonly called a drone, so that we had eyes on some of the major areas in the city. Our investigative people were mining information from various websites, and they were able to put together teams when we had criminal occurrences in the city to investigate immediately. We also have something called force protection, and that means what we do is accompany our fire apparatus, particularly if they go out of the city into a hot zone. So we had to plan for that. And then, of course, we had the communications record, jail personnel, most of whom are civilian, that were just as diligent as everybody else during that period of time. So what I'd like to do is, I don't want to overwhelm you with statistics, but I think it's very noteworthy that during this period of time, we made 126 arrests for crimes other than curfew. There was no curfew-only type arrest. There may have been a secondary charge of curfew for somebody that was in a stolen car or something else. During that period of time, we recovered 4 guns off the streets. We recovered 4 stolen vehicles, and we made multiple arrests for possession of burglary tools and looting. One of the most notable statistics is there was absolutely no looting that went on in the city of Burbank. So I think that we did have people come into the city on Saturday and Sunday, particularly at night, that came in from other cities with stolen property in their vehicles. But hopefully it had to do with our deployment and our visibility. There was absolutely no damage to any property here and no looting. Also very notable during that period of time, there was not one use of force by one of our officers. So I think that's very significant given the emotionalism that was out in the streets at the time. During the same period of time, we had 8 demonstrations in the city, and the largest of which culminated on June 4th, where we had approximately 1,200 people. So we're all mindful of the First Amendment and the freedom to petition for redress and protest. So we were able to establish with most of these groups a very viable communications where we were able to accommodate what their needs were. So for instance, on June 4th, we actually escorted the group from McCambridge Park southbound on Glen Oaks to Olive, and then, of course, they demonstrated for several hours. But there was not one problem in terms of us having to make an arrest or us getting in any type of a use of force situation. The other thing I'd like to talk about is how thankful we are, and I am in particular. So the first thing I want to do is thank the community. Because there were a lot of distractions out there. Roads were closed temporarily that were unforeseen, but the community responded beautifully, and I thank them, and the department thanks them. Also, I take a look at the protesters. We had viable communications, and we were able to not have to make an arrest, not end up in any type of a use of force type situation, which is very notable. We all saw what happened in other cities around our country during this period of time. But then I'd like to talk about our personnel on the department. We've had people that have not had a day off. They've worked at least 12 hours per day for the last 13 days. So we're starting to wind down, and by late this evening, we will have wound down. But I think it's pretty remarkable. We haven't had people banging in sick and getting injured. They were out there while it was hot, in full uniform, including some of the extra equipment, responded perfectly. And I'm very, very heartened to say that we're all impressed with what they did. Our command staff needs to be commended because they've been here that same amount of time. And without a doubt, they've switched their hours around from day to day and not had any time off. I also have to give thanks to our mutual aid cities. So we all worked together, but we were all on alert to go into each other's jurisdiction and provide assistance if necessary, and that did not happen, thank God. But as I go down some of what I consider to be noble accomplishments, and I'll reiterate, we had no complaints regarding the conduct of police officers. There was no damage in the city. There were no uses of force. And then what I'd like to do is I understand the concern, the emotionalism that exists today. We have what I would consider to be a very vibrant website. So all of our policies, all of our practices are presented on that website. And so you can, like the use of force policy, it's a total of 18 pages. But it is explained in excruciating detail in some portions, all of the different types of use of force there are and what the prohibitions are and what's allowed. So I would encourage the public, I want you to be familiar with the Burbank Police Department, so go on that website and look at those policies. Also, the Office of Independent Review has been evaluating our operation for about 9 years. And all of their final reports where they have actually dissected pieces of our uses of force, those types of incidents, as well as citizen complaints and all cases of bias policing. All of that information is on our website. And lastly, what I'd like to do is announce that in the not too distant future, we will be prepared to engage in a dialogue with the community. And I'm reaching out to folks now to see what that form should be. But we realize that we need to sit down and discuss where we've been, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. So that will be announced soon. And in the interim period of time, our staff is available to talk to people about whatever concerns they may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Will the city attorney please report on closed session?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the staff, and members of public watching. Council met earlier this afternoon for 2 items under existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54-956.9, subsection D1. One case was Kin versus the City of Burbank, which is a personal injury matter. The second was Jones. Oh, sorry, I had myself blocked. The second matter was Jones versus City of Burbank, which was a wrongful death matter, and there's nothing further for me to report on those items. Thank you.
Thank you. Now is the time for joint general public comment. If you'd like to participate, please call in now at 818-238-3335. Persons speaking during this first period of public comment may address the council on any matter concerning city business and/or any agenda item except the public hearing. If you speak on the public hearing item during the first period of public comment, your comments will not be included in the public hearing record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. We ask for your patience as we finish up with one speaker and move to the next. To participate, please call 818-238-3335. Madam City Clerk Mullins, do we have any callers on the line for public comment?
Madam Mayor, yes, we do. We have 2 callers in the queue right now, and one of them, I believe, is ready to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our first speaker is Heather Robb. Heather, you are live with council.
Hi there. I hope everybody can hear me. Sorry, I'm calling from my car at the protest at the Empire Center. I thought tonight's meeting was going to be tonight, so I'm a little frazzled, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I know that all of you received my email last week, and I really thank 4 of you for your thoughtful responses, very much so. I was glad to see the statement from City Council and the Police Department last week, but I couldn't help but feeling like 3 very important words were missing. Black Lives Matter. Maybe you think it goes without saying. Maybe you assume it's a given. It's not. It is important for us to be clear and specific right now, because we are at a pivotal moment in history, and I hope this moment does for Burbank what we see it doing in cities all over our country, causing us to examine and reflect on the role that police play in our communities. I know that BPD has undergone changes since 2012 when, I'm quoting the Burbank Leader, it was being plagued by allegations of civil rights violations, including racial discrimination, sexual harassment, and police brutality. I moved here in 2016. The same year, a Burbank man was killed by a taser usage that was 4 times longer than the 5-second guideline of 23 seconds. And that usage, according to the OIR audit released last March, BPD found that taser usage to be, quote, in policy without any documented analysis. I would ask, what is the use of this information being downloaded and analyzed if there is no analysis or consequences? And the same goes for body cams. But I want to speak specifically, and I know this is going to be in a conversation in July. I just heard about that today. But I want to say I'm glad for the oversight that the police chief's statement listed, and I appreciated that, but we can go so much further. Specifically, we should be talking about a chokehold ban, which is being discussed on a national level and has been supported by our own Senator Kamala Harris. We should talk about the elimination of qualified immunity. We should talk about if the police are going to be a part of our lives here in Burbank, they should be tracking hate crimes, which a number of my friends in the community found out they're not currently doing, and they should be monitoring hate groups here in Burbank. But even more than reforms, we need to look critically at our budget. A budget reflects the city's values. They're doing this in LA, obviously, and all over the country, including Minneapolis. Our police budget, as far as I can tell, the proposed budget for the 2021 year appropriates just over a third of our proposed expenditures at a city level, more than Parks and Rec, community services, library services, community development, and public works combined. Is that a reflection of our city's values? I would argue that it is not, and I would encourage all of our city council members to rise to this moment and educate themselves as I am educating myself on these issues, which are of the greatest urgency and in the public consciousness like they haven't been and should have been for decades and even centuries. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next caller.
Yes, you may transfer. Is the call coming through? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kayla Griffin. Kayla, you are live with council.
Hi, my name is Kayla. I'm a resident of Burbank, and I'm calling to request that you consider reducing police funding for the 2021 fiscal year. Increasing the police budget to almost $62 million is obscene at a time when your own budget projects revenue shortfalls. Like most cities, I assume Burbank will face budget cuts this next year, and because of that, I'm asking you to take the proactive step to reduce the police budget and reallocate those funds to housing and community services that will support Burbank residents. A few weeks ago, when addressing a graffiti call, it was reported that BPD sent not only their patrol officers, but their motor officers, K-9 unit, and a helicopter all over someone with a can of spray paint. While I can't claim to know the intricacies of a city budget, that use of resources feels excessive, and if the reason for that is that those resources were available at the time, it further reinforces my point. While I appreciate that BPD has taken steps to improve their use of force policies, their funding cannot be ignored. An almost $62 million budget cannot be justified in a city where residents struggle to pay their rent and schools lack adequate funding. Additionally, I wanted to express how disappointed I am in the silence from city leaders over the past week. At a time when surrounding mayors spoke up, you remained silent while enacting 5 p.m. curfews that disproportionately affected hourly workers. I don't doubt that you all ran for public office out of a passion to help improve your city, and this is your chance to do just that. Please support a budget that lifts up people, not police. Please reallocate police funding to community services for the 2021 fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have other callers?
Yes, we do have another caller coming through.
Our next speaker is Linda Besson. Linda, you're live with council.
Madam Mayor and City Council, our Burbank Police Department Chief issued an open letter to the community on June 5th. He wrote that, quote, "Trust is the most important factor in achieving our mission." Let's look at some information from the Burbank Police website, specifically summaries of internal affairs investigations. In 2018, BPD had 18 citizen complaints of discrimination or harassment. All 18 were determined to be unfounded. We are hearing the voices in Burbank who are now speaking up for the first time because they feel they will now finally be heard. Those voices do not reflect the conclusions shown in this report. We need to listen to all voices in Burbank. We are not immune from hate, and we know the entire city must come together in order to have these necessary and long overdue discussions. If our police chief truly values the trust of the entire community, transparency must take place. The fact that all 18 citizen complaints were dismissed as did not occur or frivolous needs attention. While our police chief states that Burbank Police Department prides itself on its diversity, there is nothing on their website regarding a hate crimes policy. They have statistics and other things, but don't have a category for hate crimes. If we're truly going to fight hate as a community, we need to get all this out in the open. Last Saturday, Burbank residents gathered on the Chandler bike path to show support for our neighbor who was the victim of a hate crime. Yet he was told by Burbank police that this despicable act does not constitute a hate crime. Why not? There needs to be transparency for all of us. The city needs a policy on hate crimes that allows citizens to know that if they report activities to Burbank police, they will be protected. This policy should include what actions the city will take in response to hate group activity. We can't address this piecemeal. We have to know in advance what the laws define as hate crimes and hate groups and what we as a community can do, what actions we can take. We need this guidance, then we can all act to protect each other. As our community calls, emails, and contacts our city officials to demand change, it is clear that most of our Burbank government representatives feel no need to respond. If there is a response, it is only to defend the status quo. City Council needs to act now and take action to make sure that all residents feel protected, no matter what they look like, who they love, and how they live. We can lead this movement here in Burbank to substantially reduce racism and other forms of hate, but we have to have the courage to act. Our community has clearly shown it has that courage, and now it is time for our elected officials to join them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other callers?
Sorry, my mic is off. As of right now, I don't have anyone in queue. And we've been having our phone lines open for quite
Okay.
some time now.
Okay, thank you. There being no further public comment, I now declare the public comment period closed. Now is the time for a brief response from City Council, the City Manager, and/or the City Attorney. Yes, colleagues of mine, any comments? Okay, I would, yes, Councilmember Gable Luddy.
Isn't sure that others wanted to speak first, Madam Mayor, but I want to thank the callers, especially the one who's out this afternoon at the protest and Black culture celebration out at the Empire Center. And I know that we all come under criticism for not speaking out quickly enough or soon enough. I would like to say a couple of brief things. First, I want to thank everyone who emailed me regarding the issues that they raised. Black Lives Matter, 8 Can't Wait, Campaign Zero. I also want to thank those who spoke with me that I had the opportunity to listen to. I would just say that we are not immune from hate crimes, racism in this city. And I also want to say for myself, it's been a period of self-reflection, considering where we are and where we're going, as Chief LaChasse discussed, and mindful of what we've been able to do in the last 10 years. I welcome having that story told. I also feel that focusing on Burbank is important, as the speakers all said. I also want to say that I think that we should, or I'll just speak for myself, consider the larger issue, not paint our city with a brush of the national issue, but move together in a positive way locally and have the conversation that needs to be held. Thank you very much, callers, for calling in, and thank you everyone for sending the emails to us. I deeply appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I would just like to thank the callers. Thank you very much. And Black Lives Matter. And I know that we as a city council promote and defend equality for everybody. And we are, I feel like we're speaking up against, proactively against racism every day within our community by what we say and do. And I think we're diligently trying to answer all of the emails, all the concerns, and thank you. We're taking this very seriously, and we will move forward in a way, with understanding, and we'll learn from this, and we'll learn how we can do better, how we can be better, how everybody in our community can feel safe and equal. Thank you. So now we move to the consent calendar, which may be enacted in one motion. Madam City Clerk, please read the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Consent calendar, item number 1 is approval of the minutes for the meeting of May 19th, 2020, and the dark meeting of May 26th. Housing Authority minutes for the City Council meeting for May 19th, 2020. Adoption, item number 3, adoption of an ordinance approving zone text amendment, project number 19-0006734, to update the city's art and public places ordinance. Item number 4 is to authorize participation in California Air Resources Board board's statewide electric vehicle point of sale rebate program using low carbon fuel standard program process by entering into I got stuck at this word. I can't say it. Multilateral Clean Fuel Reward Program Governor's Agreement with the various electric utilities. And that item number 5, we still have one item. Authorize the acceptance of donation of $10,000 from the Syrian community of Burbank for expense related to Project Hope and procurement of personal protective equipment. And that concludes the items for the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Yes, Councilmember Murphy. Please unmute.
I'll second it.
Excuse me, Councilmember Murphy, did you move to approve it?
I did.
Okay, thank you. And there was a second? Yes, Vice Mayor
Vice Mayor.
Frutos.
Got it.
Okay, yes, Councilmember Gabaletti?
To reiterate what I'm sure we all feel, and that is our appreciation to the Syrian community for providing that contribution to our city. That is deeply appreciated, and I'm glad that you were able to recognize them earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So,
That's fine. Roll call.
okay.
That's
Would you like
okay.
to do roll call?
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Frutos,
Yes.
Councilmember Gabaletti,
Yes.
Councilmember Talamantes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Springer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is the time and place for the public hearing of the Burbank Housing Authority to consider the Public Housing Agency 5-year plan for fiscal years 2020 through 2025, annual plan for fiscal year 2020, 2021, and proposed amendments to the Housing Authority Administrative Plan. There will be a public comment period during the public hearing session. If you wish to comment on this item only, please call now at 818-238-3335. You'll be placed in a queue until the public hearing comment period begins. Before we proceed, are there any disclosures related to the hearing? Okay. Ms. Mullins, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Do we have the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes, you do. We did not receive any correspondence. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any written communications on the matter?
No.
Will the representative of the Burbank Housing Authority please introduce yourself and summarize the item for us?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Odette Ivazian, and I have a pre-recorded presentation for you guys today. Good evening, Housing Authority Chairperson and members of the Housing Authority Board. My name is Odette Ivazian, Housing Assistant, and I'm before you this evening to present required documents that the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires to be submitted by a housing authority for the administration of the Section 8 program. These required documents outline the mission of the City and Housing Authority and the goals for achieving its mission, primarily of serving the city's most needy and vulnerable households in the next 5 years. These documents are required in order to continue to receive funding. The due date for these documents is typically April 15th of each year. However, with the coronavirus pandemic, HUD granted staff's request to extend the submission of these required documents. In addition, HUD has issued other statutory waivers for the program in order to assist landlords and tenants participating in the program during this time. Before going over the details of the HUD required documents, I'd like to provide a brief update on the status of the Section 8 program. Housing Authority staff has been working diligently to maintain business as usual to ensure there is no disruption to the housing assistance provided to our Section 8 participants. In order to do so, it has required staff to keep up with HUD's ongoing updates as they are being published. HUD has implemented COVID-19 operational changes and implemented waivers with the understanding that the public will not have the ability or access to resources to conduct business as usual. Specifically, the Burbank Housing Authority has implemented new protocols and waivers to our annual recertifications, inspections, and most importantly, recalculations. These changes include waiving certain requirements for income verifications, processing requests with documents tenants can provide, and accepting telephone self-certifications on income and other usual requirements. As participants' income has been impacted by COVID-19, those households require immediate attention. Housing Authority staff has been processing changes in a timely manner in order to make adjustments and rental payments as required for these priority files. With regards to unit inspections, staff is conducting inspections over the phone. The work that staff continues to do for the program is reflected in the mission and goals outlined in the program documents. Staff re-reviewed goals and priorities as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and staff believes that the housing goals, along with HUD's goals to provide affordable housing and economic opportunity, along with a suitable living environment free from discrimination for participant households, remain unchanged. That in the coming months and years will be critical for the recovery of the city and nation. The goals and objectives outlined in these documents continue to meet the requirements of the Section 8 program tailored to the Burbank community within the funding allocation provided each year, including expanding the supply of assisted housing, maintaining the quality of assisted housing, promoting self-sufficiency of families and individuals, increasing awareness of housing choices, and working with federal representatives to improve and expand rental and home ownership opportunities for lower-income households. The Section 8 program is only one piece of the City Council's larger housing strategy and goals for providing affordable housing in the community. By implementing this federally funded program and maximizing the utilization of vouchers available, the Housing Authority has taken existing housing units in the community and provided rent subsidies to make those units more affordable to approximately 900 extremely low and very low income households. In order to continue to receive these funds, the Housing Authority must submit a 5-year plan and an annual plan describing the Housing Authority's efforts in implementing the program during the next 5-year period. Furthermore, HUD requires a self-audit each year, and based on that audit, HUD considered the Burbank Housing Authority a high-performing agency. HUD also requires housing authorities to submit revisions to the administrative plan if necessary. The administrative plan establishes local policies and procedures for administering the program in compliance with regulations and requirements. The proposed changes this year are clarifying processes and procedures that come up during the day-to-day implementation of the Section 8 program, of which are summarized in your materials and include 2 primary areas: applicant waiting list and voucher issuance and briefing sessions. The proposed program documents were presented as required to the Resident Advisory Board, made up of current tenants on the program. There were approximately 70 attendees at the public meeting held on February 18th. The Resident Advisory Board did not have any changes to the documents. They had general questions related to overall rules and regulations for the implementation of the Section 8 program that staff responded to as outlined in your materials. The required noticing was completed, and no public input beyond the Resident Advisory Board comments has been received. In late April, the Housing Authority received the budget for the year with a budget allocation of $9.5 million as reported in the budget public hearing. With this level of funding, it is expected that Burbank will fund all current 900 voucher holders on the program. We do not know at this time if additional vouchers can be funded up to the allocation of $1,029 as rental prices in Burbank continue to increase. Staff continues to closely monitor voucher utilization, turnover, and funding, and as funds are available, staff is hopeful new applicants will be selected from the waiting list as outlined in the administrative plan in the future. If approved this evening, the updated administrative plan, 5-year plan, and annual plan will be submitted to HUD later this month to continue to receive federal funding. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We'll now open the public hearing to hear from any persons who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the council for a maximum time of 3 minutes. To address the council, please call 818-238-3335. Madam City Clerk, do we have callers in the queue?
No, we don't, not as of right now.
So bear with us. We'll give potential callers a couple minutes.
So our lines, Madam Mayor, have been open. We never closed them after the previous public comment period, and I still don't see anyone in the queue.
Okay. Thank you. There being no public comment, I now declare the public comment period closed. Okay, so staff, do you have anything to add at all? Okay, so council will now discuss and deliberate. What's council's pleasure? Yes, Councilmember Gabaletti.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. There was something in the presentation that given by Ms. Avazian, and thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned inspecting over the phone, and there may be people who are as curious as I am about what that really means. How do you guarantee habitability if you conduct an inspection over the phone, or are you referring to the recipients of the vouchers? So would you please clarify that for us?
I'd be happy to. So Burbank Housing Authority, because of COVID-19, HUD has approved housing authorities to conduct these inspections over the phone. And so what we have been doing is we've been contacting our participants who are due for their annual inspections, and we've been going over the items of what we would usually check during an inspection. And I can give you an example. We ask them, is your door working properly? Are they locking properly? Are your windows working properly? Your stove, are the burners working properly? Do you have any leaks in your faucets? So on and so forth. So we've been going over each item with the participants, and they've been great.
Checking in with the tenants themselves to find out if their building, their apartments are up to proper operation and things are not in disrepair.
Housing standards, yes, ma'am. These are Section 8 participants.
Yes. All right. Thank you. The second question I had maybe is for either of you, Ms. Leyland or Ms. Avazian. Can you cover the increase in the point system for unsheltered residents of the city of Burbank once again, please, and what that change was?
The preference change that we conducted was, if I'm not mistaken, the change for the preference was to pretty much to assist those in the community that are most in need.
Correct. And I will add to, thank you, Ms. Ivazian, the answer. We have been over the last several years working with the City Council on the preferences for the waiting list. And in the materials, we have gone through that information and we have preferences assigned to the most needy and vulnerable, which would be the homeless households, the veteran household, the disabled households. And so what we have been seeing is in order to assist those most needy, including the homeless, we wanted to look at the point system and make sure that those households with those preferences really were getting the most out of the weighted average. And in your summary sheet, I'm just going to refer to that page. Is order of selection, and it's on page, it was changed to 10 points. And it would be page 4-3 in the exhibit. Would be exhibit attachment 3. I'm going to turn to that page for a moment, if you allow me. Ms. Ivazian, if you get there before I do, please feel free to jump in. So we are in attachment 3-28. We have under the order of selection for preferences, Burbank residents is the category. Homeless working with qualified service provider, with the preference before was 5 points and it was bumped up to 10 points. And that is, again, to go through the different policies that we've discussed with the City Council Housing Authority Board in the past to continue to work with those most needy and vulnerable households, including those that are also veteran disabled as listed in Chapter 4 of the administrative plan.
Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question on page 4 of the staff report. Could you please give an example of HUD allows flexibility in payment standards or subsidy levels for program participants between 90 and 110% of the fair market rents. For fiscal year 2021, the payment standard for participants will be an average of 93%. Based on number of bedrooms of the Los Angeles County 2020 FMRs. Could you please give an example with actual market rent and how this works?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't hear you. Can you please repeat your question again?
Yes. In the staff report, it says that HUD allows flexibility and for program participants between 90 and 110% of the fair market rents. And for fiscal year 2021, the payment standard for participants will be an average of 93% based on number of bedrooms of the Los Angeles County 2020's FMRs. Can you just give an example of how it works, like with the
Department-specific operational correspondence to.
Thank you.
Sure. So the way that the payment standard works is, I'm going to give you an example. Payment standard, for example, for a 1-bedroom is currently $1,500. And what the Housing Authority does is we take that payment standard and the family's total household income, and we do our calculation to inform them as to how much they would qualify for to go and find themselves a unit here in the city of Burbank.
So the $1,500 would be
That's the budget. That would be, think of it as the budget for the 1-bedroom units.
And that's how much the Section 8 would contribute to the rent, no?
No. That's just the calculation that is used to determine the amount that the family would qualify for.
Okay, so they go find an apartment that's $1,800 or $2,000. How does the program help them?
The payment standard for a 1-bedroom currently is $1,500. So what the Housing Authority does is we take that $1,500 and we take the total household income of the participant and we do our calculation and tell them the amount that they would qualify for. So let's say it wouldn't go above that $1,500 technically.
Okay.
The household would want to aim to rent something that's less than that $1,500. And then from that total portion, the family pays a portion of that rent, and then the remaining, the housing authority pays.
Okay.
If I may add to what Ms. Ivazian is explaining, for also the members of the public to understand how the payment standard works, we also, Madam Mayor, work within the budget authority that is provided for the Section 8 program. And a few weeks ago, we heard about using as much as we can with our limited funds to provide funding for our participants. So within the budget authority that is given, the HUD requirement is also saying, please utilize your budget authority to pay between 90 and 110% of the fair market rents that are published by HUD, every Housing and Urban Development, every year. So we have our budget authority, we have the fair market rents that they have published. We look to see what are the rents in Burbank. We also look to see how many households we have in the different unit designations. So in the staff report, we mentioned on average, we pay 93% of the fair market rent. So we have the schedule that HUD has provided, and we have our budget. And on average, that's how much we are paying out to each household. Ms. Ivandizian is giving you a specific example, looking at the contracted rent, looking at the income of the household, and then how we go about. From those different rent schedules, then I will give you another example. The fair market rent that HUD has published for a one-bedroom is, I believe, about $1,550. So we know in Burbank, a one-bedroom is actually much higher, and they can vary. However, based on our funding, our payment standard is 95% of that fair market rent. We aren't able to pay 100% of what all the one-bedrooms, unfortunately, in Burbank is because of the budget authority, but we do our best to utilize our budget to spread through and provide as much assistance and subsidies to the different households in the different unit sizes, whether it be a one-bedroom, two-bedroom, and we have a handful of three-bedrooms.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from my colleagues? Yes, Vice Mayor Frutos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Leland, I'm curious, how many people do we currently have on the waiting list today?
It is many thousands. The last count we took was about 28,000. Is that correct, Ms. Ivazian?
Yes, it is. And I can specify?
And I was reading in the report that we're kind of changing a little bit to put priority to homeless people. Can you kind of update me on that?
Be happy to. One of the areas, as Ms. Ivazian mentioned in the presentation, is the goal of the Council of the Housing Authority has been to serve the most needy and vulnerable. And within the regulations, the federal government does allow us also to set preferences. So our preferences include resident, meaning living or working in Burbank, and then further preferences for our veteran households, disabled households, homeless households, and we've also added other preferences such as severely rent burdened. We made some of those updates back in 2018, notified everyone on our waiting list. We get continuous updates from the public, and one of the changes that you have in your materials is increasing the point system for the homeless preference from the 5 points noted in the red line to the 10 points. We understand that need. We work very closely with all of our departments, and we're very much familiar and working with you on your goals and objectives to working with the homeless community. So that is something we are looking at to increase in that point system.
Great. Thank you for the update. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No further questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Talamantes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. It's very educational. Now, in regards to how you prioritize setting aside the homeless, how does that 28,000 people get prioritized, and how often do you change over that list?
The list is set. The last time the waiting list was open, it was in 2016. However, households routinely get notified of the preference changes I mentioned in 2018. They are able to access their application online. We do have an online system where they're able to do that. Many households will call, many households will provide written documentation, and they're they're able to update their preference at any time. It could be that somebody who applied in 2016 wasn't at the time disabled and circumstances have changed and they want to update their application with the disability preference. They are welcome to do so. Ms. Ivazian works with the waiting list on a daily basis and processes requests for our applicants on the waiting list. So we are continuously working with households and making sure they are informed of any changes that are made. This particular update, we will continue to notify and households are able to update their applications.
And so how do we verify if a household goes onto the website and just updates, is what you're saying is updating? How do we verify those are legitimate updates?
Applications, when they're accepted at the face value that the applicant provides. So it's they're saying, I am a veteran, I'm disabled, I'm household. There are then, when we get to the next phase, Ms. Ivazian mentioned, in the next phase, when we actually are able to assist households, that's when the verification happens. So if somebody has indicated on their application, I'm a homeless veteran, also disabled, they are free and welcome to make those identifications on their applications. That's noted on their application. Then once the selection happens based on those preferences, then is where the housing authority goes through and verifies that they actually do meet those preferences. If they do not meet the preferences, they don't get removed from the waiting list. They get notified, we were not able to verify the veteran preference, for example, or the homeless preference, because in the documentation, it does indicate in our administrative plan, also indicates how we go about verifying those preferences.
So a lot of this is left up to the applicant to make the changes, as opposed to us reaching out to them to ask them about if they have any changes that have occurred since their application was submitted.
When they do, if they do provide the updates online, staff is available and does go through the information to confirm what it is that they're requesting. But we do take it, as I mentioned, at their request and add it to their application. So they're essentially self-indicating what their preferences are.
So a lot of this is based on honor system.
At the application phase, yes, sir.
If I can just add, Councilman Talamantes, we also, when we updated those preferences a couple of years ago, we notified each of the applicants that were on our waiting list and let them know that they should update their preferences on our list. So when we make changes, substantial changes like that, they know that we notify them and they know that they need to go on there and make any changes in their households on the wait list.
So now, Samoa, you're saying a couple years ago, or is it? I heard 2016.
When was it, Maribel? She had the date.
It was in 2018. The waiting list the last time the waiting list opened was in 2016. Then we made preference updates in 2018, made the notification to all the households. All of that information has gone out and applicants were able to make any changes and they can continue to do so.
Do we have had any discussion in the past in regards to maybe every 4 years or every 5 years, go through and update the list?
Yes, one of the areas that we do look at and that we do regularly and we will do every 2 to 3 years is update also the waiting list. It's called the purge. It doesn't sound like a very nice term, but what it is informing everyone, you're on the Section 8 waiting list. Here are the preferences. Are you still interested? And some folks may respond and say, thank you very much. I've been assisted in the city of Los Angeles, so they will be able to come off the list. Or yes, I'm still interested. And we remind everyone to please keep their information active, keep their mailing address information current with our office so that we are able to contact them in the future.
Now this, your place on the list, is that a family placement or is that an individual placement? Like Jess Talamantes' place, or the Talamantes family has a place on that list?
It's for a family. One of the areas that we also looked at about 2 years ago is changing how the applications are accepted and looked at. And so we made the distinction and change from household to family. So somebody can apply as a family member for themselves. They are applying, and whoever else is listed on their application, that's part of their family, and that's how their application is noted on the waiting list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Council Member Murphy.
To staff, this is all federal money, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we don't put any Burbank money into this. This isn't matching or anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then I would move adopt a resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Burbank approving the Public Housing Agency 5-year plan for fiscal years 2020 to 2025 and the annual plan for the fiscal year 2021, authorizing the executive director to execute the certifications required by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and amending the Section 8 program administrative plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Councilmember Talamantes was the second. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Talamantes?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghiberletti?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Frutos?
Yes.
Mayor Springer?
Yes.
Thank you.
There are 4 reports to council today. Our first report is for approval of the 2019 General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Report. I'd like to invite Karen Pan, Administrative Officer for the Community Development Department, to commence the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor Springer and Council. My name is Karen Pan with Community Development, and we have a pre-recorded presentation for you that is presented by Lisa Frank, our senior planner, as well as myself.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Springer and Council. This report is regarding the 2019 General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Reports, and this is presented by Karen Pan and Lisa Frank in the Community Development Department.
Examples.
Both the General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Reports are submitted to the State's Office of Planning and Research and the Department of Housing and Community Development annually by April 1st. Staff was scheduled to present these reports to Council on March 17th as well as June 2nd. However, due to the delay in meetings caused by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, staff proceeded in submitting these reports by the April 1st deadline, and resubmissions for any updates directed by City Council are acceptable. The purpose of the reports is to assess the city's progress in implementing the general plan as it relates to goals and policies, and to see if there are any statewide trends in land use decisions. The first report we will go over this evening is the general plan. A general plan is a state-required policy document that provides guidance to cities in determining the future physical growth and development. Burbank adopted a general plan in February of 2013 and is referred to the Burbank 2035 General Plan. There are 8 main elements: land use, air quality and climate change, mobility, noise, housing, open space conservation, and safety. And the last element of the Burbank 2035 General Plan is the plan realization. Plan realization describes the means for implementing the goals and policies. In the General Plan Annual Progress Report, it outlines the municipal code updates we've made to the zoning regulations last year, any General Plan amendments, activities, goals, and status updates to the plan realization. For example, there was a notable General Plan amendment in 2019. This was the approval for the Avion project at 3001 North Hollywood Way, adjacent to the Hollywood Burbank Airport, consisting of industrial warehouses, creative office space, and a hotel. This project helped meet goals outlined in the land use element. 2 long-range planning documents that are starting in 2020 are the Burbank Center Plan Update, which is now referred to as the Downtown Burbank Metrolink Transit-Oriented Development Specific Plan, and the Golden State Specific Plan. Both of these specific plans will help meet goals of the land use element, housing element, and mobility element. For the open space and conservation element, Parks and Recreation Department completed a number of projects in 2019. The department made a number of improvements to the LA Kings Burbank Sports Center, such as replacing the existing roller hockey rink board. And the department also completed renovation projects at the city's War Memorial at McCain Ridge Park, as well as improvements to the Walk of Fame and ball field improvements. The last example are the transportation planning efforts, such as the Burbank Channel Bikeway that was approved in 2019 and that will be completed this fall, and Complete Streets Plan that we presented to you this month. This project helps meet the goals of the mobility element in the Burbank 2035 General Plan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor Springer and members of the City Council. Lisa Frank, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. We will now move into the second and remaining half of the presentation, providing an overview of the Housing Element Annual Progress Report. I will first begin with some related announcements. Although tonight's focus is on the 2019 annual reports, I want to take a moment to provide some general announcements relating to the city's housing element. First, as we are nearing the end of the current 8-year housing element cycle, the existing housing element is due for an update and certification from HCD by October of 2021, a strict deadline established by the state. City planning staff is now working with a consultant, Karen Warner Associates, to assist the city in the update process that will include a series of new requirements resulting from recent legislation. In order to formally begin the update process, a study session is planned for July or August. In addition to the housing element update, Senate Bill 379, adopted in 2015, requires local jurisdictions, including the City of Burbank, to update their safety elements to address climate adaptation and resiliency strategies applicable to the city upon the next revision to any element of the general plan. Since the city is going to be revising the housing element, the safety element update is also required. Additionally, Senate Bill 1000, passed in 2016, requires jurisdictions with disadvantaged communities, communities defined as having higher exposure to environmental health hazards, to incorporate environmental justice policies into their general plans. Staff will be looking at how to incorporate this analysis into existing elements of the general plan, such as housing element goals and policies. Lastly, the housing element update will overlap with other long-range planning efforts, including the Burbank Center Plan update, the Golden State Specific Plan, and Greenhouse Gas Reduction Plan. The timing of all of these projects that will be taking place over the next year and a half will allow the city to coordinate its long-range planning goals and ensure consistency between these planning documents. Moving now into the Housing Element Annual Progress Report, or APR, as I'll be referring to it. In between housing element updates, all jurisdictions in the state must also report annually on their status and progress in implementing their housing elements by April 1st. A key component of evaluating local accomplishment in meeting housing element goals and policies is by looking at how much progress has been made toward the assigned Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. I will be going into more detail on the RHNA in the next slide. For the report, Burbank, like all other cities throughout the state, is required to use a specific form provided by HCD. As of 2018, the form establishes additional reporting requirements, including housing applications submitted, entitlements approved for building permit review, and housing units that received final certificate of occupancy within the calendar year. Previously, the report only focused on building permits issued. Additionally, as noted in the staff report for this item, concurrent with review of the 2019 APR and based on the city's ability to update previous submittals at any time, staff has also requested that a revision to the 2015 Housing Element APR be submitted to the state. The revision is requested in order to address a previous reporting error that was recently identified by the city's housing element consultant. This request will be discussed in more detail later in the presentation. Although the APR is required by state law, it also provides useful information to the general public as well as to city staff and the council. By keeping track of housing production and housing goals on an annual basis, The APR not only measures our status and progress in contributing to statewide housing goals and ensuring compliance with state law, but also creates an opportunity to relate the information back to our housing puzzle as we work to further the city's housing goals, including the council's goal of building 12,000 housing units over the next 15 years. This slide will provide an overview of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, referred to as the RHNA. Before I review the table shown here, I'll go over a little bit of background. The RHNA is mandated by state housing law as part of the periodic process of updating local housing elements. The RHNA quantifies the need for housing at all affordability levels that each city and county must zone for in a planning period. The RHNA does not necessarily encourage or promote growth, but rather allows communities to anticipate growth resulting from population, employment, and household growth so that collectively the region, subregion, and more specifically the city can grow in ways that enhance quality of life, improve access to jobs, promote transportation mobility, and address social equity and fair share housing needs. As a major component of the housing element, the RHNA requires the community to plan for meeting its fair share of regional projected need over the 8-year housing element planning period. The table shown here is a snapshot of the city's RHNA progress for the current planning cycle, which began in 2014 and concludes in 2021. The table is taken directly from Table B, located on page 9 of Attachment 2 of the Council Report. What the table is showing us is that in 2019, building permits were issued for 115 net new housing units. Net new refers to the fact that the project has resulted in more housing units on the site than previously existed. For example, if a single-family house was demolished and rebuilt as a single-family house, that would not be reflected here. Of the 115 building permits issued in 2019, 51 were reported as non-deed or covenant restricted housing units at the low-income affordability level, and 11 housing units at the moderate income affordability level, as defined by state thresholds. The remaining 53 units were above moderate income, also referred to as market rate. The table also shows what was reported in prior APRs, as well as the remaining RHNA allocation. To summarize, the city has reported 512 building permits for housing units from the current cycle beginning in 2014 through 2019. This leaves 2,172 housing units remaining out of the city's 2,684 total RHNA allocation for the cycle ending in 2021. Over the next couple of slides, I will be expanding on the topic of housing production and how some of the other information from the APR helps to tell a larger story about the city's progress. As you recall from the previous slide, 51 low-income housing units were reported for 2019 and 11 moderate-income units. This slide will provide an overview of where those numbers came from out of the 115 total building permits tracked. As noted in the Accessory Dwelling Unit, or ADU, rent survey provided in Attachment 4 and prepared by the city's ADU and housing element consultant, Karen Warner Associates, Burbank and other cities have come to recognize that ADUs may provide affordable rental options for smaller households. The city therefore engaged the consultant in 2018 and 2019 to help identify what percentage of overall ADUs reported might be considered affordable, even without having an affordable housing covenant. HCD has allowed for such reporting as long as documentation is provided and ultimately accepted. In order to assess the anticipated affordability of newly created ADUs in Burbank, the survey queried 50 ADU rentals shown on the map here, advertised within the city and surrounding San Fernando Valley communities. The red dots shown on the map represent the locations of the ADUs in the rent survey. Once this information was collected, the affordability of the ADUs was established by comparing the rents listed with the amount that households of different income levels can afford to pay, based on the standard that households should spend no more than 30% of gross income on housing costs. One-person households were assumed. The table shown presents the findings of the survey. 46% of the ADUs surveyed were available at rents considered to be affordable to low-income households, 10% for moderate-income households, and 44% for above moderate-income households. The results of the rent survey and affordability analysis were then used as the basis for the assumed income distribution of ADUs being produced in Burbank by applying those same percentages to Burbank's ADU production. Please note that in Attachment 4, page 5, the paragraph directly preceding this table should be referencing these percentages. Although the RHNA captures housing production in the form of building permits issued within a given year, as many are likely familiar, housing development proposals often take more than 1 calendar year from initial submittal to actual construction. With the additional reporting requirements that were introduced starting in 2018, we can get a better overall picture of housing in the development pipeline. In addition to the 115 building permits issued, we also found that in 2019, the following additional housing units were tracked for residential projects: 175 submitted, 632 granted planning land use entitlements, and 272 issued final certificates of occupancy. In total, 1,194 new homes were tracked at various stages of readiness in 2019. These numbers are highlighted to support the idea that we are further along than the RHNA table alone might depict. As we near the end of the current RHNA and housing element cycle, it's hard not to talk about what's to come. This table shows a comparison between Burbank's 5th and 6th cycle RHNA, as well as those of other nearby cities for reference purposes. The anticipated 6th cycle RHNA allocation for Burbank is 8,752. What the table also highlights is the fact that the majority of jurisdictions in the state, not just those shown here, can expect higher 6th cycle RHNAs. On October 15, 2019, the Council received a presentation from a representative of the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, to overview the 6th cycle RHNA projections. The Burbank estimate remains similar to what it was at the time of the SCAG presentation. Additionally, in May, the SCAG Regional Council voted to extend the timeline for adoption of its Connect SoCal Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy by up to 120 days, resulting in an associated delay to adoption of the final draft RHNA allocation. This means that we will not know the city's final draft allocation conclusively until the fall. Now I will go back to staff's request to revise the city's 2015 APR and provide an overview of why this is being requested. In the 2015 Housing Element APR, staff included 11 very low-income deed-restricted units to account for the construction that was completed on the 11-unit Veteran Bungalows project. The project provided deed-restricted affordable permanent supportive units by acquiring and rehabilitating the 11 existing dwelling units on the property. The project is noteworthy on its own and reflects the Council's multi-pronged approach at addressing affordable housing. However, while this project generated new deed-restricted affordable housing in the city, staff recently became aware that these units could not be counted towards the RHNA, as the project involved the rehabilitation of existing housing units and did not result in any net new housing units, which is required by HCD in order to be counted. This issue was raised while the housing element consultant began reviewing city background documents to help prepare to initiate the housing element update. She has recommended that staff revise the report to avoid any potential for compliance issues with HCD in the course of their eventual review of the 6th cycle housing element, which will include a look back at the current housing element cycle. The table shown on the slide is found in Attachment 5 to the staff report, highlighting the proposed edits. It is important to note that the 11 units would still be acknowledged in a comment section that existed in the 2015 template, which was noted on page 6 of Attachment 5 to the staff report. Additionally, the housing element consultant will be providing a summary of accomplishments under the current housing element cycle as part of the update process, and the 11 units would be recognized in that review as well. Having summarized the 2019 General Plan and Housing Element Annual Reports and associated background, staff recommends that the City Council approve the 2019 General Plan Annual Implementation Progress Report, approve the 2019 Housing Element Annual Progress Report, and approve the proposed revision to the 2015 Annual Progress Report previously submitted to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Office of Planning and Research. This concludes staff's presentation, and we will be available should the council have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Colleagues, questions, comments? Yes, Vice Mayor Frutos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to the staff. I don't know who would like to answer this question, but on page number 9, I'm looking at the 6th cycle RENA preview. The city of Alhambra, in their 6th cycle, they're only required 6810. Why is their number the lowest within this region?
Give me one moment. I'm just going to pull up that table momentarily.
Okay.
You're referring to the comparison table of Burbank and the other cities for their RENA cycles, correct?
Yeah, I just curious why Alhambra, for the most part, has the lowest cycle of required housing, and we're way up there. We're like the second. So I'm just curious, why are they the lowest?
Yeah, I can comment generally on where kind of those numbers end up coming from. Essentially, SCAG, the regional government for this county and other nearby counties, has to develop a methodology that reflects state statute in order to generate these numbers, and that's based on a lot of different factors. It includes population and household growth, socioeconomic factors, history of housing production or potential underproduction. And so what happens is that they kind of put together an existing need and a projected need to come up with these numbers. So relative to itself, and looking at Alhambra's 5th cycle, it looks like relative to themselves, it's still, I would say, a substantial increase. But they did make adjustments for different factors, as I mentioned, things like income levels in those jurisdictions if they're considered high resource and things like that. So there were a lot of adjustments that were made. So that's kind of generally where those calculations were coming from.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Frank. Thank you, Madam Mayor. No more questions.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Councilmember Gabel-Letty.
That was a really good question. I just want to say before I ask my questions back to the Vice Mayor and to the staff, SCAG goes through an extensive process, and it goes through a review by each of the cities that sit on the housing subcommittee of SCAG. And I'm sure that you had this experience. I know that Councilmember Talamontes has had this experience. There can be a great deal of pushback, but as Ms. Frank said, there's a methodology that they work through, and that methodology actually is a bottoms-up methodology. So it comes from our city and all the other cities providing input at the beginning, and then from there they derive the way they're going to forecast and what do they say? Distribute the requirements, and that may explain why a city like Santa Clarita gets 10,000 before and 10,000 again. And a city like Burbank had about 2,800 before, and now we have 8,000. So it seems like there's no rhyme or reason, but there actually is a pretty extensive process that starts at the very local level, thank goodness. So I want to commend the staff for the presentation. I thought that Karen Warner's financial analysis of ADUs and her ability and your ability to extrapolate from that information what our local experiences here in Burbank has been very eye-opening. And I think we should all feel pretty good about going forward that ADUs are indeed a way of securing additional meaningful affordable housing. But to that end, this isn't to you, Ms. Frank, because it's a really good report. I just want to register my displeasure, I guess you might say, what are they thinking with the veterans units? Are these not deed restricted in perpetuity? That's a question. And if they are restricted in perpetuity to low and very low income, is that not net new housing, even though it may have come out of the skin of an old building that we finance the rehabilitation of?
Sure, and I don't want to misspeak in the duration of the deed restriction on that project. I know it's, if it's not literally in perpetuity, I know it effectively is designed that way. Unfortunately, state statute and HCD and overseeing state statute is very strict in its criteria for what can be counted towards the RENA. They have what I would say is that they've kind of alongside the increase in housing legislation and their responsibility to ensure that it gets implemented by jurisdictions, I would say that they've ramped up their technical memos and FAQs to cities to better understand the requirements that are at play. And in so doing, they've basically said that if the city has not already identified that they will be reporting rehabilitated or converted units from existing housing to meet a portion of their RENA, then you can share that for informational purposes, but you cannot count it towards the RENA necessarily. In fact, the current template that they've provided, they've gone so far as to essentially lock that portion of the template and that you can't even attempt to report it in that section. And so it is unfortunate. And the fact that we reported it in 2015 and wanted to highlight it in that report reflects the fact that we know that it was a notable project in the city. And we believe that, as I mentioned in the presentation, that the RENA doesn't necessarily provide a complete picture of a city's accomplishments and towards their housing goals. And so it's really one particular metric of that. And while it is unfortunate that that this was brought to our attention, we wanted to also point out that we would be highlighting it. The housing element consultant would be highlighting it in their review of the city's accomplishments under the current housing element cycle, which would be included in what goes to HCD as part of that housing element update. And so really it's not to take away from that project. It's, though I can certainly understand why it looks that way. It's more just to make sure it's being reported in the right place. But we don't disagree that it's a question mark.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it very much. And I think we all do. That's a BHC project, isn't it? Burbank Housing Corporation?
Yes.
Yes, so that's in perpetuity.
Okay.
They will manage that and continue to qualify tenants and moving forward. So maybe I'm just trying to say I'm glad to hear that we get recognition, although not credit. Maybe that's a difference without a distinction. But it always seemed to me that when we as a city have done so well with our housing corporation in rehabilitation, and by the way, for the community who may not know this, when our housing corporation has rehabilitated other real estate in the city of Burbank and brought it into their portfolio of low-income housing, they make sure that every tenant has a right of return to that. And they will also provide tenants with the kind of relocation that has helped them in the past buy a home on their own and move into the next level up. So the kind of housing development that we have done in this city, and I've said it before, deserves broader recognition because we are about strengthening the neighborhoods and not laying in gentrification and displacement. There is no displacement from projects that are undertaken by Burbank Housing Corporation. I had just just a question about attachment number 2, which has 2 spreadsheets. It's the second spreadsheet, and the name of it is income by building permit cost. And I didn't understand what that was referring to. So maybe you could take a minute to look at that.
Sure, I'm just going to pull that up so I have it in front of me.
Okay.
So I'm looking for where it refers to the building permit cost, but perhaps I can provide an overview of what, and I'll acknowledge that table presents a real printing challenge. It's a behemoth of a table, but essentially what it's set up to tabulate is all of the housing applications in 2019 that were either issued a planning entitlement or a building permit or a certificate of occupancy. So it goes beyond what is shown in just the RENA table. And then when you pair it with table A, that shows the applications submitted that have not yet gotten to the point of an entitlement and so forth. So really taken together, it's supposed to show the full picture. As far as the building costs, I'm not sure if you might be referring to the fact that it also looks at the affordability level for every unit that's tabulated there. Okay. Yeah, so the first part of that table 2, where there's an orange, I'm not sure if everyone can see this, but if you are looking at the table, there's the header in the first section that has orange, and those reflect the housing units that were entitled as well as the affordability levels. So for example, 777 Front Street was entitled in 2019. So it doesn't just note the number of units, it also goes on to specify how many were moderate income level and above moderate income level, or whatever might be applicable to the project listed. So if you were to go further into that table A2, where there's the different colored headers, another section you would see is the building permits and the affordability levels. And that's where most of that is those ADUs that are reported as some of which are reported as low income, moderate, or above moderate, based on that rent survey. So I don't know if that gets at your question, but that's what that table is supposed to show.
It's very helpful. Thank you. I just one final comment. I don't really have any questions, but I appreciate the summary on the general plan. The plan is do you want to get that, Ms. Frank? You're not.
Sorry about that.
This is the foibles of
yeah, this is new territory.
It's very new. I appreciate the general plan information because general plan is a comprehensive document. So not only are we going to learn about more specifically things having to do with housing through the housing element, but also things like recreation implementation, park implementation, police department and what they've done. And you will find these things embedded in the staff report. I think it's very important that we see forward progress by our city towards realizing the general plan that we adopted a few years ago. And I look forward to more. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Murphy.
Hi, I have some questions. They're mostly rhetorical, I think. And I'm not really expecting answers, but we learned from the virus, the pandemic, that the more intensely we live, the more closely we live, the more of us are packed into small spaces. There's going to be more deaths, more destruction. A lot of experts said that the sprawl that California had, especially Los Angeles, was helpful in terms of not seeing people die as opposed to San Francisco, which is much more intensely developed. I'm wondering if any of the legislatures were paying attention to these reports and others. And that's really the only comment I have. I think it's a good report, and I'm willing to move forward with it. I would move that we approve the 2019 General Plan Annual Implementation Progress Report that we approve the 2019 Housing Element Annual Progress Report, and that we approve the proposed revision to the 2015 APR previously submitted to CD of Housing and Community Development and Office of Planning and Research.
Thank you. There might be a few other questions. I know I have some.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, we have your motion, but I just, okay, I have just wondered that I read in here that the mixed-use development plan is on hold due to staffing issues. Can I ask questions after the motion? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So is that, may we use consultants for that? Can we get a grant for the mixed-use plan and continue it? Maybe apply for a grant? Because we did quite a bit of work on that. Is that right? Oh, Fred, thank you.
Okay. Mayor,
Mr.
yes,
Ramirez,
thank
excuse
you.
me.
What we are doing is we're actually incorporating the design standards into mixed-use places as part of the Burbank Center Plan update, as well as the Golden State specific plan preparation. So instead of doing it as a standalone document, it's going to be incorporated. Those policy components and standards, objective standards, are going to be incorporated into both specific plans. It's similar to whatever the council approves when it comes to complete streets. Those policies, those will also be incorporated into the new specific plans that are being currently updated over the coming year.
Okay, so the mixed-use components will just be integrated into those specific plans.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And I thank you very much for including universal design in here under one category. I can't remember exactly which one, but thank you for that. And I think, could you please just restate how many ADUs we have like in the process, like permits and
Sure.
Thank you.
I can say in general, and Lisa can get into the details of the annual report, but over the since 2017 through now, we have over 450 ADUs either in review or at some stage of permit issuance. So you've been very successful in implementing policy that has generated quite a bit of ADU units, and they work with the larger mixed-use projects to provide part of that RENA number, our fair share, towards the housing crisis that exists. But Lisa may be able to chime in as far as for the ones that we're reporting for this year, but collectively over the last 3+ years, we're pushing over 450 units.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Franks, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I'm happy to provide the specific numbers for 2019 that we reported for building permits issued. So that was, we had the 51 low income reported as low income, 11 as moderate income, and 48 as above moderate income. So if anyone's really good at quick math.
That's you.
I'm kidding. So that's 110.
Okay, thank
in
you.
total.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments on this report? Okay, thank you very much for a very good report, very good comprehensive report. Oh, and okay, there was a motion, we need a second. Jess, is that you? You're muted.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I second it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam City Clerk?
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Talamantes?
Yes.
Councilmember Gabeletti?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Frutos?
Yes.
And Mayor Springer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we move on to an update on the City of Burbank's COVID response and recovery efforts. Will
In terms of
Eric
shows
Baumgardner, Emergency Management Coordinator, please present the report.
would that be the most clear?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. Eric Baumgartner, Emergency Management Coordinator, City of Burbank Fire Department.
I'd like to give a real brief update on our statistics as well as some information on what we've been doing since our last report in the city of Burbank. So currently, County of Los Angeles, as of today, the latest numbers of cases in the city of County of Los Angeles, 65,822 positive COVID cases in the county. There have been 93% of the fatalities in the county have been related to underlying medical conditions, which is consistent with what we've been seeing across the country. City of Burbank, we're currently sitting at approximately 424 confirmed positive cases in the city of Burbank. So our numbers have been relatively consistent with the county's increase. Typically, the county and the city have been increasing by approximately 1% to 2%. So our case numbers have been in the single digits for percentage of increase, which is really good. It's positive. It's showing that we are slowing the spread. Some updates since our last presentation and where we've been going. The county has aligned itself with the state of California with its roadmap to recovery and opening up and its 3 stages that we're at right now. So we just entered stage 3. So the county, to be a little bit more consistent because there was that inconsistency with the variances, has tried to align themselves as closely as possible. So as of May 26th, the county public health officer announced with their health order its recovery efforts to coincide with the California Pandemic Resiliency Roadmap. What this means is the new health order at that time brought us into phase 2 reopening, which included the resumption of face-based services, certain recreational activities, in-store shopping at low-risk retail, hair salons, as well as sit-down dining at a reduced capacity. Since then, we've gone a little bit further, and this last weekend they've discussed moving into phase 3. The state is looking at moving into phase 3 this week, and the county is making plans to similarly move into phase 3 along with the state towards the end of this week. Phase 3 will begin to open up day camps, schools, gyms, museums, and also spectator-free sports. So we are moving forward, we are allowing for more progress, and we are starting to move forward with the city. In addition, the city itself, we've been working actively in developing protocols and plans to also stagger our phases to resume normal city operations. So we're starting to bring back most of our city employees and starting to look at how we will adapt in this new environment to service the public better and be able to meet the needs of the public with safer guidelines to allow for safety of our personnel as well as the public, but still maintain that high level of service that our constituents have come to expect from the city of Burbank. City departments have already started bringing their personnel back. We've been giving them some basic training on environmental hygiene, cleaning of the workspaces. We're also doing protocols for ensuring our safety with our employees to do a protective screening as they come into work to ensure that everybody meets certain standards as they come to work. We've also been working with our partner stakeholders, so we've been working closely with the hospital, some of our studios here, and some of our nonprofits, keeping them apprised to what our phases are and how we're opening up the city, but as well as gathering information from them to maintain a robust common operating picture within the city of Burbank. So we know basically what the hospital is doing, what their status looks like, which makes us be able to basically perform informed decisions or make decisions as we need to as we're going forward every day. So the Emergency Operations Center is still up and monitoring for situation reports. The Emergency Policy Group is meeting 4 times a week. We're reducing that to 3 times a week, or we just reduced that to 3 times a week. So we are still meeting and making informed decisions every step that we go to ensure that we open up safely for the public. With that, I want to turn it over to Chief Garcia with some information on the department and our response.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Council, Eric Garcia, Fire Chief. Just elaborate a little bit more on what Eric Baumgartner was talking to there. I want to provide just an update with regard to City of Burbank COVID stats, statistics, as well as what our planning and reopening guidelines are looking like at this point. So start off statistically within the city, and as Emergency Management Coordinator Baumgartner mentioned, we're as of 1,200 hours today at 424 positive cases within the City of Burbank. Additionally, we have 40 fatalities within the city as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. Currently, 192 of those 424 citywide cases come from our congregate living facilities. Of those 192, which is roughly 45% of the overall cases itself within the city, 120 of those are the residents. 72 are members of the staff that are working at those congregate facilities, and then 31 of the 40 fatalities within the city also lie within those congregate care facilities. Specifically, from a Burbank Fire Department perspective, we've responded to 136, what we term SIC 2. SIC 2 is the COVID-19 call code for Verdugo Fire. And the 136 of those that we've responded to, we've transported 60 of those patients. St. Joe's, through that transport and confirmation, has found 29 of those 60 transports to be positive cases as well. From a reopening perspective, Emergency Management Coordinator Baumgartner really alluded to some that I'm going to share here, but just to reiterate, through the planning process, and the city team has taken great lengths to develop two sets of guidelines that are really going to help to be the framework for our city as we move forward. The first is the City of Burbank Government Restoration and Recovery Guide. And additionally, we've got the City of Burbank Restoration and Recovery webpage guide. That is for the local businesses within the community. So our primary goal in developing these best practices is to provide safe working environments for our city team as well as the community as we begin the reopening phases and city business begins to resume on a more normal type basis. State and county guidance were utilized to develop these local guidelines, and they will be the ongoing guidance that will help us to update as we begin to move through each of the phases as well. These best practices adjust such areas as the physical distancing as well as the infection control measures, and again, Mr. Baumgartner mentioned the pre-shift employee screenings is an important safeguard that we've instilled and will have in place for city business. Additionally, face coverings, cleaning, disinfectant, and the appropriate signage to ensure that there isn't any confusion about what needs to take place once we get our city businesses up and running as well. City buildings. To further instill a stronger sense of confidence, each of the departments also has developed a COVID-19 business operations plan. And through that, we've been able to procure and install a lot of improvements within the city buildings to help initiate and have some safeguards in place. A couple examples of those are the plexiglass sneeze guards. So some of the areas within city business that will require close interaction between the community and our employees, those sneeze guards will be in place, as well as some stanchions and queuing decals that will also be in place to ensure that we maintain proper physical distancing while inside. As we've said all along, this will be a collective effort, and it will be all of our responsibilities to ensure that we're doing our part to make sure that we're successful in this reopening phase. What I view, and I think we all can agree to, is that discipline and consistency in these best practices will be paramount for us, being safe as we begin the reopening and as we transition through each of the reopening phases as well. We're definitely finally reaching some milestones within this COVID-19 pandemic. And as we begin to resume normal business, and I'd like to disclose by saying that all of our city team has went to great lengths and has put together a solid plan for us. And the intent behind this is to ensure that we've got the confidence for our employees to know that we've got a safe environment for them to be working in. And we've kept council apprised as we've gone through the developments of these, and we thank you for your support and allowing us to get these put together and developed. And with that, that's the end of my report, Madam Mayor. If you have any questions, be happy to answer those now.
Thank you very much. Council, questions, comments? Yes, Councilmember Gabeletti?
For all that you're doing, I wondered if you had any perspective on the possibility of increased COVID infections because of the outpouring of concern and conversation that people have had in our community through marching and protesting. Councilmember
Gabeletti, I can begin, but I'll let Eric also elaborate on this a bit. I know that there's potential for some an increase or an uptick in caseload, and I know that some of the guidance has been to ensure that testing centers resume and will be open for that. So in the event that some of the people that have been out and as the reopening phase begins too, that's going to be an important part of ensuring that we are able to manage that in a real proactive measure. But I'm going to let Erica elaborate on that a little bit more.
Afternoon, Councilmember. Unfortunately, there has been an uptick in percentage of cases. There has been a significant increase over the past probably 7 days or so. Unfortunately, right now, they're not able to attribute it to one specific cause. It happened to be the timing of the protests were also aligned with the timing of opening up more and more businesses within the different sectors. It had just started with a lot more of the retail as well as some of the other sectors that were starting to begin in-person type transactions. As a result, though, they are starting to do contact tracing. One of the requirements that the state had in order to meet the variances for us to move forward is you had to have that contact tracing ability in place. So they are looking at to see, were these people at protests? Were these people not at protests and only visited businesses? Did they only go to a protest and then pass this along to other people that they came in contact that didn't go to businesses as well? So with that contact tracing over the next couple weeks, we should have a better picture of if this was related to the protests or if this has slowly been related to more and more businesses opening up and there being a lot more in-person contact just in general.
Thank you.
For that,
Great
I had one
question.
other question, and I think it's great. What I've seen is First Amendment with masks, and this has been a very grateful thing to see. So my second question is, when do we as council get together again as a body in City Hall?
There isn't a clear definition on that yet. With phase 3 reopening, they are starting to look at gatherings or public gatherings and looking at numbers for that. Again, it's going to have to meet with social distancing and meet requirements to still be able to do that. So we should be getting some type of guidance over the next couple weeks. What the numbers will be as how many people can actually gather at one time, we're not sure yet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Talamantes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, I've got a couple of questions in regards to, can you go over the numbers for Burbank? As far as cases and how many deaths and where the deaths have occurred?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, the beginning of that?
Yeah, the number of cases in Burbank and the deaths and how many have been in assisted living facilities?
Copy that, correct, yes. So what we've got is a total of 424 cases. That is today as of about 1,200 hours. Currently, the statistics that I see is we've got 40 fatalities. 31 of those fatalities have been within our congregate living facilities.
Do we have a breakdown about ages? I mean, obviously the 31, I would assume that the elderly.
Correct, that those are residents, correct. That my understanding, those are all residents.
In the other 9, is there any?
That I'm not certain of.
Whether it's strictly seniors or is it young people as well that have been hit?
Yeah, correct. The balance of those 9, I'm not exactly certain on.
Okay. So now in regards to testing centers, I've heard a lot about Dodger Stadium having a testing site. Is that strictly for LA City residents? You have to make an appointment to go through that line?
I'm going to let Eric answer that one for you.
All right.
Councilmember, the testing sites are all LA County testing sites. The difference between them are there are ones that are being hosted by LA City. The difference is the screening approach. When you make an appointment, you make an appointment through one website on the LA County Public Health site. You can go through the LA City site, which will then take you and redirect you. LA City sites are doing anybody that, whether they show symptoms or not, what they call asymptomatic. However, the other LA County sites that are not necessarily in the city of Los Angeles, unless you fall into certain sectors, are still only doing symptomatic. But regardless of which one you want to go to, you still make your reservation on the LA County website and they will process you at any of them. So the Dodger Stadium site is an LA County site being hosted by LA City, and the difference being is if you're an LA City resident going to an LA City site, you can be asymptomatic.
And what I've heard from Mayor Garcetti is that they're going to the nose swab as opposed to the others. Have you heard anything about that? That it's more, it's a better test?
So several of them have already been doing the nasal swab. The nasal swab is something that's been utilized at several of the sites to begin with. It just depends on which tests that we get and which tests are administered. LA City is trying to work on going to that strictly. However, it really comes down to what's available at the time and then processing those results.
So if I go on the LA County site, can I ask to go to the Dodger Stadium? Or do I get directed to San Bernardino?
So no, you'll only be at a site within LA County, and it's going to give you several choices within your proximity based on your zip code. And then you go ahead and choose one of those sites based on the appointments. Our closest sites, the closest sites to the city of Burbank at this time are Dodger Stadium, Hanson Dam, Glendale Memorial Hospital, and I believe the Rose Bowl might still be operational for the remainder of this week. However, they are looking at shutting down the Rose Bowl operation.
So what's the website for LA County?
It's going to be lacounty.gov, or I believe it's, lacounty.gov/COVID-19.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Murphy.
Move that we note and file.
Okay. We'll note and file. Thank you. Our next report is for consideration and adoption of an uncodified urgency ordinance to extend urgency eviction ordinance 20-3 934 as amended by ordinance 20-3 936. Will Maribel Leyland, Housing Authority Manager, please present the report?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Maribel Leland with the Community Development Department. The consideration this evening is the extension of the eviction ordinance prohibiting the evictions of residential and certain commercial tenants for non-payment of rent caused by the coronavirus. The Burbank eviction moratorium was initially approved on March 17th and was in effect through the end of April. It was extended on May 5th and was in place through May 31st. The ordinance was retroactive to May 1st and allowed both residential and specified commercial tenants to defer rent until November 30th, 2020. The city's ordinance specifying repayment of rents gives residential and commercial tenants until November 30th to pay back any back due rent, including late fees and/or penalties deferred under the city's urgency ordinance. This rent deferment terminates on November 30th, 2020, unless further extended by action of the City Council. With regard to commercial tenants, the City Council added restrictions to the applicability of the eviction ordinance to exclude commercial property leased by a tenant that is a multinational company, a publicly traded company, or a company that is not eligible for the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program. These types of companies were able to invoke the moratorium in April, but were excluded in the ordinance that was in effect through May 31st. On May 29th, after the staff report before you this evening was drafted, the state eviction moratorium was extended for 60 days from the date of the order through July 28th, 2020. Furthermore, the County of Los Angeles also has an eviction moratorium that applies to cities that do not have their own eviction moratoria, and that county order was extended in mid-May and is effective through June 30th, 2020. The county mentioned they would reevaluate their county order every 30 months to see if they would continue to extend. Staff has prepared a draft ordinance as an extension of the urgency ordinance to June 30th, 2020, or the council may wish to extend it further through July to coincide with the state order, retroactive to June 1st, 2020. That is for the consideration of the council this evening, and the action would require a 4/5 vote. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we get to questions, I just wanted to say we had put a placeholder, but the governor didn't act fast enough for print. So if the council were to adopt this ordinance this afternoon, then to finding number 7 on attachment 1-2, it says that the order expires on May 31st, 2020. We would change that to the new date. It was 60 days from either, we'll put the right date in. I believe it's either July 28th or 29th, but we'll put that in since that's the governor's order was extended. And then just the retroactivity goes to May 31st, 2020, and that's on section 5, which is on attachment A14. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councilmember Talamantes?
I'm ready to make the motion if it's okay, Madam Mayor.
Okay, sure.
Any questions from my colleagues?
Okay, no questions?
I'll second it.
Okay,
All right.
okay, Madam City Clerk?
So I move we adopt an uncodified urgency ordinance of the Council of the City of Burbank extending urgency eviction ordinance number 20-3934 as amended by ordinance number 20-3936. And like the city attorney mentioned, it requires 4/5 vote for adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, yes.
Councilmember Talamantes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Frutos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gabaletti?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
And Mayor Springer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Our final report is for authorization of an agreement to pre-fund employer contributions with the CalPERS 115 California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust Fund. Will Financial Services Director Cindy Giraldo please present the report?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is Cindy Giraldo with the Financial Services Department. I do have a pre-recorded presentation for you this evening that I will ask if they can go ahead and start. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Cindy Giraldo with the Financial Services Department. This report is to seek City Council approval for the establishment of a 115 pension trust with CalPERS and approval to transfer an initial balance of $10.7 million into the trust once established. I want to start my presentation with a little bit of background information on how we got here and the overriding goals that we are trying to achieve. A major goal set forth by the City Council has been to address the financial resiliency of the city. As Council is aware, there have been numerous council and labor initiatives aimed at improving the fiscal health of our city. A significant component of these initiatives has been to address the city's nearly $391 million unfunded pension liability and ongoing annual employee pension costs. To that end, I will remind the City Council and the community about some of the key tactics we have implemented. The City Council adopted a pension and other post-employment benefit funding policy. This policy establishes council goal that these costs be fully funded and mandates responsible financial discipline by requiring that annual pension costs be budgeted and paid for by the city annually, thus helping to ensure generational equity by not leaving today's costs to be addressed by our future residents. The City Council has approved a multi-year pension funding plan where additional discretionary payments are being made to CalPERS each year to both directly reduce our unfunded pension liability and to reduce our ongoing annual required liability payment. $1.2 million in annual savings has already been achieved as a result of our first year payment, and the City Council approved our second year payment as part of the approved fiscal year 2021 budget. In order to reduce the annual cost of ongoing pensions, the city implemented the Public Employee Pension Reform Act, more commonly known as PEPRA. By doing so, it lowered the pension benefit for all new city employees effective back in 2013. The City Council adopted a second financial policy on market labor costs, which in addition to setting a policy on employee compensation levels, it also states Council's expectation that all employees share equally in the annual cost of their pension benefit. which now brings us to the purpose of this evening, which is in furtherance of City Council's direction to staff to establish a 115 trust, which works hand in hand with City Council's third financial policy, which mandates that year-end available general fund balances beyond specific thresholds be dedicated towards addressing pension liabilities in all years where these benefits are less than 90% funded. So what are the benefits of establishing a 115 trust? A 115 trust allows the city to set aside funds that can be used by the city to address future pension costs. The funded balance provides a cushion to allow the city to be better prepared to absorb future pension cost volatility, which can come from either economic performance or future CalPERS actuarial changes. Funds deposited in a 115 trust have expanded investment options, which allow the city to earn higher yields over the long term. When needed, the city will be able to draw on these funds at its sole discretion to help cover annual CalPERS pension costs or to make additional liability payments. The city has experience working with 115 trusts. Since 2007, we have successfully used these trusts to improve the funding of our other post-employment benefit liabilities. In order to select the best service provider for the city, staff issued an open request for proposal through the city's purchasing division and established a review committee that included the city treasurer, the Burbank Water and Power general manager, the Burbank Water and Power chief financial officer, and the financial services director. Following the review of all proposals submitted and interviews with each of the respondents, the review committee unanimously supported the recommendation to proceed with CalPERS as our 115 pension trust service provider. While the review committee found all respondents to be well qualified, there are some key points that set CalPERS apart from the rest. First, CalPERS is the only nonprofit organization, which means the costing is based only on the cost to manage the program being offered. CalPERS is the largest trust provider in the state of California and currently manages OPEB and pension trusts for more than 570 California employers. Since 2007, the City of Burbank has successfully worked with CalPERS as a participant in their Section 115 Trust Program for other post-employment benefits. The city's OPEB trust, already with CalPERS, allows the administrative process for setup and ongoing reporting to align well with our current processes, reducing the burden on current staff resources. CalPERS offers 2 investment strategies that the city can choose from that align well with the goals of our pension funding strategies. CalPERS offers a low, straightforward cost proposal of 25 basis points. And finally, for the management of 115 trust assets, CalPERS applies no divestment practices for socially conscious purposes. This means that all investments within the asset target class is available to CalPERS to achieve the stated performance goals. Of course, establishing a 115 trust can only benefit the city if it is actually funded. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Council has taken many steps towards controlling ongoing city pension costs and addressing our nearly $391 million citywide unfunded pension liability. These actions included the adoption of a new pension funding commitment policy, which requires that any remaining general fund available balance in excess of 6% of the general fund's budgeted appropriations be used to fund pension liabilities until such time as the pension is no less than 90% funded. Based on the available fund balance at June 30, 2019 of $32.3 million, less 6% of the fiscal year 1920 budget, we have calculated the required pension commitment to be $20.4 million. As part of our current year, fiscal year 1920 budget, Council already paid $9.7 million directly to CalPERS as part of our multi-year pension funding plan, leaving $10.7 million to be applied toward pension liabilities. In compliance with City Council's policy and direction received, $10.7 million is currently held in reserve in the general fund. As part of this report, staff is requesting council approval to transfer these funds to a proposed Section 115 pension trust once established with CalPERS. As a reminder, the city retains full access and control of these funds and can draw on them when needed. So with that, it's staff recommendation that the City Council move to authorize the establishment of the 115 pension trust with CalPERS with the necessary staff authorizations and with the initial funding of $10.7 million. Staff, along with Mr. Matt Goss from CalPERS, is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giraldo, for your report. Colleagues, questions, comments? Okay, yes, Councilmember Talamantes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rallo, thank you for your report. Something that I guess we've been discussing for a couple of years.
Yes.
Or more, and it's good to start going down that road. It's going to be extremely beneficial to us. Now, in regard to, I know we're just starting out right now, but what happens down the road when the city wants to pull out of any agreements like this with PERS? Can we just do it, or do we have to give notice? How much notice? Is there a penalty?
Sure. The city absolutely retains control over these assets, so we can open a second 115 trust either with CalPERS or with another provider. We can completely exit out of our agreement with CalPERS, no penalties whatsoever, and reinvest those assets as we see fit. So we retain complete control of the funds always.
Now, you mentioned reinvest the funds in another 150. There are several other companies that provide the service.
Oh, absolutely. We received a total of 4 responses to our request for proposal, but there are more than 4, I'm sure, available.
Okay. Well, no, I'm in full agreement with this. Thank you very much for the report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Frutos.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Raldo, and thank you for your report. Per policy, what type of audit responsibilities will be put in place so we can make sure that the investment is making its returns? We'll be able to discuss it periodically. What audits controls will be put in place to make sure that this money is strictly going via policy?
Sure. I'll speak a little bit about what the city will do. And if you want to hear more about specifically on what CalPERS does to review their investment policy, then I can turn it over to Mr. Goss. So we will receive reporting regularly from CalPERS on the performance of these funds. And within those strategies, and they offer 2 strategies, there's actually benchmarks that relate to those. So we'll be able to see how they perform in relation to the benchmark. So how would, how do those asset categories perform over time? And is CalPERS running along with it? They should be relatively close to the benchmark. The idea is that they would perform consistent with how it does. So that means they'll have better years and they'll have worse years, but they should move together along with the market in general across those categories. So we'll have access to review that from CalPERS and their performance. And if we're dissatisfied with how they're performing against their benchmark, we could always choose to make a switch if we wanted to. As far as making sure that the investments stay within their investment policy, meaning that they're not taking on more risk in effort to get a higher return that violates their investment policy. I'll turn that over to Mr. Goss to talk about the internal procedures that they have at CalPERS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aldo, and thank you for the question, Vice Mayor Frutos. So what we're going to be doing is maintaining ongoing investment policy compliance. And we do that on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. There's a myriad of various reports that come out that Mr. Aldo described that are going to allow us to compare our performance, for example, time-weighted investment performance to benchmarks to ensure that our investment policy's strategic design is unfolding as intended. A couple additional thoughts I wanted to provide you are that in our comprehensive annual financial report that we release each year, which is confirmed by audit, we will be reporting this trust fund in compliance with GASB statement number 84 as a fiduciary fund. You'll be able to see that. You'll also be able to see a schedule of changes in fiduciary net position of assets in the trust fund so that you have an audit confirmation of the asset position. And that would be along with quarterly statements that are made available in an online record keeping system, which you could view daily. And then the final piece is we will be visiting the city. We used to do that in person at least once a year for the OPEB trust. Things have changed a little bit. We can do it through WebEx like we are doing this tonight. And we will provide account updates on a regular reoccurring basis in perpetuity at a rate at which is convenient and acceptable to you. So if you want that done more than once a year, we're willing to do it. It's up to you to let us know what your expectations are, and then we'll simply deliver upon those. Does that satisfy your question?
And one last follow-up question. Will this 115 fund, how would I say, will it be non-political, meaning as soon as you change governors, the next governor in the future might look at where we're investing the money in the 115? Will this be a total neutral, business-only investment trust fund?
Yeah, I appreciate your question. And the underlying concern is a valid concern. I'm also concerned about these types of things. So I've been making sure since 2007, when I began my employment at CalPERS, that wouldn't happen. But we had something that goes back before 2007 that ensures that will not happen. And that's plenary authority, which is granted by statute to our CalPERS Board of Administration, which was provided back in the early 90s when one of our governors at the time tried to move some money out of the pension system. And that gives full authority to our Board of Administration to act as sole and exclusive fiduciaries. So I do not have any reason to believe that your concern will actually manifest in reality.
And then my final question is, in the event a future council 10, 15, 20 years from now wants to say, hey, we're got a very healthy, fat 115 trust fund. The council back in 2010 with Measure P really did a great job in the financial structure. Is there going to be a penalty of the future council, 25 years from now to get out of the 115 fund? Can they just terminate at their will, obviously to whatever procedure is, or is there like some type of longevity before they can pull the money out if a future council decides that, okay, we got a lot of money there, we don't have to worry about it no more, we're going to pull out?
Sure. So another good question with an underlying concern that I agree with is valid. So the assets in this trust fund are going to belong at all times from day one all the way in perpetuity 100 years from now, solely and exclusively to the city of Burbank, who will have full control over the assets. Now, with that being said, okay, there is a point at which you might have more money than you're eligible to reimburse in any single year because you're only eligible to reimburse the valid expenses.
Excuse me, Mr. Goss, can you?
To get it all out at one time would require that you have valid expenses meeting that amount of balance, or that you transfer the money to another qualified trust fund in a method similar to what Ms. Giraldo described to Mr. Talamantes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goss. No more further questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Gabaletti.
Thank you much, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your report. Mr. Aldo, help me out again. How much annual revenue do we feel will be we will get as a result of this investment?
Well, it's going to depend on the investment strategy. We are hoping to have the $10.7 million initial investment at about a 4% annual rate of return. It should be about $428,000.
Thank you. More questions, comments? Okay, may I have, yes, Vice Mayor Frutos.
Madam Mayor, if we're done discussing questions with my colleagues, I'd like to make the motion.
Sure, thank you.
I'd like to make the motion to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement to participate in the CalPERS California Employees Pension Trust, CEEPT program, approve the delegation of authority to request disbursements to the city manager, financial services director, city treasurer, BWP General Manager and the BWP Chief Financial Officer, and approve initial funding of $10.7 million.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Madam City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Frutos,
Yes.
Councilmember Talamantes,
Yes.
Councilmember Ghiberletti,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
Mayor Springer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now is the time for brief council comments, including reporting on council committee assignments. Vice Mayor Frutos, would you like to start?
Yes.
Thank you.
Going back to Thursday, the May 21st, I participated with Councilmember Murphy in a walking tour with our Park Recs Director, Marissa Garcia, one of her team members, Mike Del Campo, and Diego Selvalos, regarding the $1.4 million expenditure for Bryce Canyon Park. On Friday, May the 22nd, I attended via the internet PIO subcommittee meeting discussing branding protocols and the policy that's moving forward that will be coming to council in the very near future. On Wednesday, May the 27th, I attended a Burbank Young Professionals Town Hall meeting via Zoom. I was not one of the speakers, but I was actively listening and taking copious notes on that meeting. And then on Thursday, May the 28th, I attended a internet meeting with Councilmember Tim Murphy regarding the Valley Economic. They have a new director. And on the conference call or video was our city manager, Judy Wilkie, and Mary Hamzoyan and Simone McFarland. And later on that evening, I attended via the internet infrastructure oversight board meeting. Nothing to report back to the council on that one. And then I attended via the Skyping web SCAG Special General Assembly meeting. I was just a listener. I wanted to thank Councilmember Talamantes, who's part of the board and actively representing us on SCAG, and also our mayor that was one of the voters on that. And then I also attended the Burbank Chamber of Commerce Webinar, the future of Burbank, and it's interesting their perspectives. I'm sure other council members were on there, but for the benefit of members of the public, one of the interesting conversations, we talk about what's going on in today's environment with the whole coronavirus and, the future of building, housing in our city. Now the conversation is, as they build these apartment units moving forward, or, condominiums or townhomes. But the bottom line is now looking into the future is really about making something in the unit that is going to be an office type meeting, because they're really now discussing stay-at-home employees. Instead of having go to a traditional office, they're now really exploring, and at least in the conversation today in the development moving forward. And then that is it. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Yes, Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you. I attended several of the things that Vice Mayor Frutos talked about. I also attended the Zonta installation, and I was impressed with the fact that the Zonta Club of Burbank is not large, but they're mighty. The two of the young ladies have distinguished themselves, especially Brittany Vaughn, who you all probably met at the Boys and Girls Club, was elected governor of the District 9. And that means that she's in charge of Zonta in 5 Western states, including Hawaii, which is a great place to go for a conference. Gloria Salas, I think I bragged to some of you, was elected not the governor, but a district director, which goes from here all the way up to Porterville. So pretty impressive for a small group. Our distinguished colleague, Emily Gabaletti, has been in Zanta for a number of years and distinguished herself as well. So we all have a lot to be proud of. I did the other things the same as Councilman Frutos. One of the things that impressed me about the building was they also talked about open space and the critical nature of balconies going forward. So amenities is still the way to go, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Talamantes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I start my report, I just wanted to thank the Syrian community for their donations to our city and the school district. Thank you very much for that. So as far as my report, I was vice chair of the SCAG Transportation Committee. I served my last meeting on May 20th. Since I will no longer be a regional council member, I was not able to qualify to move into the chair's position. If I had been able to, I would have run for chair. But anyway,
excuse me,
I served a
Councilmember.
year as vice chair, and it was very enjoyable. A learning experience. Thank you. Because as a member, as a chair or vice chair of a committee, that qualifies you to attend the executive administration committee. And so it opened up my eyes to various different aspects of SCAG, which is a five county organization. So it serves a lot of communities, a lot of cities in SCAG, a lot of diverse conversations, a lot of diverse thinking. So when we talked about RENA earlier tonight, there was a lot of pushback on the RENA numbers. It came from the state, and we were pushing, a lot of communities were pushing those numbers, saying, how do they come up with this? How do they do that? So the regional council pushed back and said, no, you know what? We're going to wait another 4 months to come up with some, let's talk to the state. Let's see if we can fine tune these numbers and make them better acceptable to some of the communities that were completely against it. So a lot of discussion was held there. Let's see what else. So we did the Memorial Day recording for Zoom last week. I attended over Zoom the League of California Cities briefing on process for League to take position on ballot initiatives. I also had a meeting with the Parks Director and her staff up at Bryce Canyon. She can update me as far as what's going to be planned up there and what is planned for that park. A lot of good things up there that's going to benefit the community extremely well. And our kids are going to really benefit from the changes up there at Bryce Park. See, I also attended a Zoom meeting on the Antelope Valley Line Capital Service Improvements Program. This was a virtual kickoff meeting for environmental clearance. And then I also I chaired my last meeting of the League of California Cities Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations June Policy Committee meeting. So we'll be moving forward with that. What else? We also had a couple at SCAG. We had a couple EAC committee, the Executive Administration Committee, had a couple of meetings to discuss the executive director's performance evaluation. So we met on Tuesday. We did a closed session on Friday the 29th. We met, and then they gave us over the weekend to put in our evals to the attorney that oversees our group, and then he compiled all the responses, and then we met on Tuesday to talk to the executive director, and it was decided that the president and the first vice president will give the executive director his evaluation. Let's see what else. On yesterday, I listened to the Burbank Chamber of Commerce webinar, The Future of Burbank. It was very interesting. They had Michael Cusimano, they had the developer of Lateria, they had the developer of Avion, and also Jeff Worth was on it. And Simone McFarland was there as well to share with Burbank's view. Really interesting conversation. You know, these big developers are sharing on what the good things that are happening in Burbank. And those projects are moving along. There's nothing holding them back, at least from yesterday. Very positive news for the future of Burbank. And Simone, you did a great job. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Gable Luddy.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to say that we at SCAG's Transportation Subcommittee, we did say goodbye to Councilmember Telemontes, who was the vice chair, and I'm hoping that he can get reselected to be a member of the SCAG committee. We did on May 20th re-elect Cheryl Walker as the chair and Steve Hoffbauer as the vice chair. Ms. Walker is the mayor of El Centro and Mr. Hoffbauer is the mayor of Palmdale. So in a way, we have bookended the transit among the 5 counties, 5 or 6 counties in Southern California. So it was good. And it still gives us as Burbank a voice because of the lines going north from Union Station. I attended the virtual Memorial Day observance on Sunday, May 24th, and I'd like to thank Mickey DiPaolo and the entire Veterans Committee for helping to put that together, including all of our statements, which became part of that memorial. On May 27th, this is a string of discussions, so I'd like to just go to the heart of what they were about. It was the League of California Cities County Division. It was a conversation with Senator Hertzberg and Senator McGuire and Christine Guerrero with Juan Garza. Who's the chair of the LA County chapter. We spoke to the 2 state senators, as well as our legislative board. We spoke about 3 bills. So while COVID is going on, while we're struggling with economic issues, while we are responding and addressing issues of free speech and First Amendment rights, and focusing on those kind of community needs, there are 3 bills and more that are going forward in the state legislature. One bill is SB 902, which is the grandson of SB 50. It has been reformulated as a voluntary bill that does not compel local government to upzone areas in the community. That is a significant change. It does, however, and we objected, contain the definition of jobs rich, which frankly is no definition at all. But I think that with our council's focus and the league's focus, I'm hoping that we can have an influence on that and get rid of that term or have it defined as job accessible. We also discussed with the senators SB 1385, which is a bill that would enable and streamline housing development in failing or failed shopping centers. So shopping centers that never made it, retail that is not working and it's in a center. The bill itself would help reinvent land use like that as housing. And the argument was that cities should still be able to get some sales tax going forward, especially as the state recovers economically. And then finally, SB 1120, which would mandate lot splits for single family properties. We raised a number of questions around this, including issues within the Subdivision Map Act itself. And I am hopeful that we will have a strong impact on this. So these housing bills are part of a package that has been developed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate. She announced her intention to do this. It's very restricted. It's been very hard to keep track of all of this. But nonetheless, Mr. Hess and the staff has been able to continue to participate, and we continue to work with our representative, Mr. Portantino, on advancing the bills that are good and really pushing back on the bills that need more work. The word on the street, so to speak, is that Tony Atkins, the President Pro Tem, will get these bills done. So we are doing everything we can to amend them in ways that are constructive and clear and are not punitive to our local government. Then on Saturday, June 6th, as I know, Madam Mayor, you presented a certificate, so I'll let you speak about it in greater detail, but it was to honor a neighbor, Ivan Kreger, on his 99th birthday. And Madam Mayor, you can please fill in the rest, but it was really a spectacular event. We did no Memorial Day this year, so the neighbors wanted to bring Memorial Day to Ivan to recognize his service. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Well, we've all
Madam
been.
Mayor, we seem to have lost a couple of council members.
Oh. Hopefully they'll return. Just one. Right. Okay. Well, he's going to miss out.
Yes, the vice mayor's off. Is he there?
No, he's here.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes. Okay. Well, as Councilmember Gable Luddy noted, the neighborhood just did a wonderful thing for Ivan Greger, who turned 99. I presented him with a certificate acknowledging his service in the Army Air Corps and his service in World War II. And he's been in the same house for 63 years, and he has a wonderful neighborhood, and his neighbors look after him. And it was a very heartwarming commemoration of his service and his birthday. I participated in a virtual meeting of the California Affordable Housing Association and the impacts of the pandemic on affordable housing. I also attended virtually, of course, the LOCC, League of California Cities webinar on planning for a really uncertain future, city finances during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. And also attended the Touchless Experience webinar, the future of the food and beverage industry and how the pandemic is affecting those decisions moving forward. And I thought the future of Burbank, the chamber webinar yesterday was very interesting, and I agree. Ms. McFarland did a great job. And I also, of course, have been, paying attention to what's going on around us and in our country and globally. And I would like to reflect on that. And I have never been subjected to racism, but I have witnessed it. And as the mayor of Burbank, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the peaceful protests and civil unrest locally and across our country. We're examining individual and collective attitudes, actions, and policies that result in the unequal treatment of Black lives, of Black humanity, treatment that oppresses, causes fear for one's very life, denies opportunity, and hinders the ability for one to thrive and reach individual and collective potential. We are committed to work together to deepen our understanding, promote and protect equality and inclusivity, and acceptance of all. To our Burbank Black community, we hear you. Burbank is diverse and strong, and we strive for a safe and secure place, a safe and secure, peaceful place for everyone, where everyone feels welcome. We stand together against racism, against bigotry, against prejudice, against oppression. And we support peaceful protest. And to paraphrase Desmond Tutu, which I happen to agree with, we are diminished when others are humiliated or treated as less than who they are. We are diminished when others are tortured and oppressed. And we, as a city council, are going to work together with our community, with our Black community, to treat each other equally, with empathy, love, compassion, and respect as we work hand in hand to build a better Burbank. Thank you. Okay, now is the time for the introduction of additional agenda items. Councilmember Gabel-Letty.
I have to apologize to the vice mayor because I can't see him on my iPad, but I understand he's visible through the YouTube. So who knows? Hi, Vice Mayor. Madam Mayor, thank you for calling on me, and thank you for that. Currently our police commission meets quarterly, and our officers have done a very good job here, and our community has done a very good job here. So let's put on our agenda as a first step the meeting schedule frequency of our police commission, and revisit that. That is my request to Mr. Hess.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, I wanted to see if we could get a report on the whole public health officer issue. I think Captain Buckgardner's done a fantastic job, and I'm not trying to diminish him to get this report, but a lot of people are confused about who's in charge. Is it the state? Is it the county? Is it the city? And as I understand it, it's because we don't have a public health officer. I'm wondering how much would one cost? Could the person be a volunteer? Could that be part-time, and then we would have a health officer? Something like that, just to get an explanation so I understand it and I can explain it to other people. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Got it? Yes, Vice Mayor Frutos.
I'm not looking, it is not a discussion, but I'd like to echo the agenda item. Mr. City Manager, if there's a majority of the council, instead of doing a one step, I recommend, if the majority, to give you a second step to hopefully bring this back by the next city council meeting, because the urgency of what's happening, I would support bringing this back right to a second step, hopefully next Tuesday, if the majority of the council feels that way for a discussion.
So, excuse me, it's fine if the majority wants to say they're willing to discuss it, but please do not say what you want, how you feel about the item. Okay? So if the majority would like something to come back sooner than later, and I'm assuming you're talking about, well, I'm not sure which item. I'm assuming you meant the item on the frequency of the police commission meetings? Yeah. So if the majority would like to see a second step so it comes back sooner, I'm asking that you not discuss or say why, how you feel about it. All you need to do is say, I would like to discuss it, period. Okay?
Got it.
Does
Okay.
that sound good for the rest of the council? Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Other agenda items. Yes, Councilmember Talamantes.
Just a comment to the agenda item that my colleague, the Honorable Tim Murphy, put forth. You know, we did used to have here in Burbank, we used to have a health department. It was down there on Magnolia. There was an office there. Whether there was a health officer there, I'm not quite sure, but that's a LA County building. I don't even know the cross street, but it's on Magnolia, a couple blocks past the car wash that's on the left-hand side. And that used to be the health office for the city of Burbank. It wasn't an employee of the city. It was a person that worked for LA County that represented the public health department. So I don't know if we can, piggyback on Councilmember Murphy's suggestion and look at that and see what's available over there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We'll bring back a report for both of those. Yeah.
Okay.
And my sense was that there was some urgency related to the police commission scheduling, so we'll try to bring that back next week. Is that
Okay.
I saw thumbs ups, so we'll do that.
Oh, okay. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that on July 14th, the agenda item will be a report from Burbank Police Department. Is that right? And so some of the questions and comments of the callers will be addressed in depth at that time?
Yes, we actually do have our Office of Independent Review scheduled for the 14th. So Michael Giannacco will be out here for his annual professional oversight of the police department. So it's good timing for us. And then we also will have an opportunity to review policies and practices as well. So and he will be there to facilitate that discussion as well.
Okay, thank you. So to the callers, if some of their questions weren't answered tonight, they will be. About our policies and what's policy and okay. We now adjourn to Tuesday, June 16th, 2020, 6:00 p.m. for a regular meeting through an online meeting process. The public is invited to view the meeting online or on television and will be able to provide public comment in the following 3 ways. By leaving an e-comment on the city webpage, www.burbankca.gov/e-comments, or by emailing City Council at citycouncil@burbankca.gov. Or you can call 818-238-3335. Thank you and have a good